Yeah, it's expensive, but when you look at what it's doing with HDR and color profiles, how it's even managing those color profiles, and the build quality all together as one, there are no other displays on the market that are doing anything like this.
This is Brad. He likes to review the tech. He also likes to draw. And this here is his theme song.
Behind me here, I have Apple's two new displays, the Studio Display and the Studio Display XDR. I was going to do a video reviewing both of them at the same time, but as I started writing, I realized this video is like 80% XDR, and the standard Studio Display is interesting enough to warrant its own video. So 2 videos it is. Actually, April is going to be monitor month here, so I got some other 5K displays to check out too, so hit subscribe to follow along with all that. Now, in recent years, Apple has become a big behemoth of a company that does everything from watches to credit cards to creative software subscriptions to movies about race cars. And back in the day, I'll admit, I was an Apple fanboy. I loved my iPod. My MacBook was great. I was a graphic designer and I loved amazing design. I was happy to pay the Apple tax for that great design. Now, Apple at times has bordered on being a luxury brand. The Johnny Ive era of Apple comes to mind. The solid gold Apple Watch era, a time when they never would have dreamed of releasing a super affordable MacBook Neo. The Studio Display XDR feels like a throwback to that era, when aesthetics were king and over-engineering was par for the course. The XDR is indulgent in a way that not many Apple products are anymore. From the top to the bottom, and it starts with just the box. The outer box has its own pull tab, so it opens the right way. The inner box has a braided cloth handle. The way the box unfolds after you open it, so you can gently pull out the display. There's extra cardboard along the back with its own pull tab just to protect the stand. Once I got the monitor set up and I put all of the cardboard back in the box, I realized the box weighs about as much as the monitor itself. And that's just the design of the box. Once you get to the monitor, you have these rounded off aluminum edges, which is like classic Apple nowadays. The front of the display is completely flat glass. And of course, the most over-engineered part of the design, that adjustable stand. I was genuinely surprised that I could push the monitor up and down without it tilting forward and back. It is a wild mechanism. Was any of this necessary? No. These are solved problems. Other manufacturers have been doing these things efficiently and less expensively for years. Was it cool? Yes. The entire experience is incredibly cool because this display isn't just a collection of specs, it is a luxury product. But again, it does have some of the specs to back it up. This is a 27-inch 5K mini LED display. We finally get 120 Hz refresh rate on an Apple monitor. You can also get this with a nano textured glass finish for an additional $300. This one doesn't have it. It has 1000 nits of brightness with 2000 nits of peak HDR brightness. We have a 1,000,000:1 contrast ratio. These are all great. If you need a 5K display though, there are a lot of cheaper options out there. If you need a super bright monitor, if you need 120 Hz, you can find those for a lot less. I think what really makes this pro, and something that's easy to miss if these are features that you don't need, is how it handles color. This does have support for those 1 billion colors. It does get super bright. It's P3 and Adobe RGB wide color gambit, which is a step up from the Pro Display XDR that this is replacing. This Adobe wide gambit is a really nice upgrade for anybody who's doing like print work or photography or that sort of thing, for people who really need that accuracy. So some of the reference modes we have here are like photography P3 D65 and Adobe RGB D65. They're even angling this display to be used for medical imaging. This is an area that I know nothing about, but there are 2 presets here for that. Apple's site does list the DICOM reference modes as coming soon. It's available now. I mean, you could plug this in and like use those now. I had a really great talk with another YouTuber, Art is Right, the other day, where we really geeked out about color. And oh man, did he have some great insights. He has a lot of experience working with monitor companies on this exact sort of thing.
Because this is a classic problem that all of us have, especially anybody who calibrate display. You calibrate 2 of them that are just slightly different brand, different models and so forth, and they're kind of off. They're both showing really good values. They pass the calibration, but they're off, and you're wondering, what the heck, right?
Yep.
And this is going to eliminate a lot of those issues that are coming up.
That interview is going live on the channel Wednesday, right after we finish up our noon live stream, so subscribe or just follow along so you don't miss that. Now, if the last 30 seconds or so of this video have been confusing to you and you don't know the difference between P3D50 and P3D65, great news! you shouldn't buy this monitor. It is probably not for you. And I will admit, I am not a hardcore color accuracy kind of guy, so it's really not for me either. I've had this monitor lined up side by side with the standard Studio Display over the last week while I was testing it, and in day-to-day use, for me, they are pretty much indistinguishable from each other. Now, that's not to say that the differences aren't noticeable when you go looking for them. When I pull up a really colorful image like my Mario drawing, I love to use this one to test out Android tablets and things like that, because in this image, you can see how the reds tend to blow out on less expensive displays. Of course, here they both handle the colors like a champ. Looking at the default macOS Tahoe background, I can see some of the differences here. The blues in the sky are a bit more vibrant on the XDR. The mountain range, it fades into gray in the background, has a more bluish hue on the XDR, less gray than the standard Studio Display. There are details on the rocks that just show up more on the XDR, but dang, the standard Studio Display still looks legitimately great, even though it's only LED, not the XDR's mini LED. Now, I know from all the comments on various videos, many of you are on Team OLED, and I get it. A good OLED screen looks amazing. The mini LED on the XDR has over 2,000 localized dimming zones. Now, this is like halfway between a standard LED display and an OLED. Whereas on an OLED, you can control each pixel's brightness, turning it down or completely turning a pixel off to get those inky blacks everybody loves. Here, brightness is controlled in those very small zones all over the display, so it can turn off small sections of the display at a time, which kind of emulates the same feel, which still gives you some really dark blacks when you need them. So you're basically getting close to that OLED experience, but without the likelihood of burn-in or screen flicker, which some people are really sensitive to. Now, one thing I like about these displays, at least when I'm using them in a Mac ecosystem, is how absolutely dead on the color spaces are from display to display. Now, most of you have probably had the experience of plugging your laptop into an external monitor at some point in your life, and then maybe you pull the image that you're working on over from one to the other, and you're like, these colors are way off. Or maybe the contrast is wonky, and trying to get those two displays to match can be a real project in and of itself, involving color calibrators and headaches, and sometimes after hours of work, both screens look worse. I was testing on my 2021 MacBook Pro, which has the M1 Pro processor in it. I was also using the newer M5 MacBook Pro, and geez, the color space between the laptop screens and these displays are so nice. It just works out of the box. I didn't touch anything, and just like looking at it from a distance, the colors are dead on. If you get really nitpicky, you are going to see some differences, kind of like the differences between those two displays I talked about early, but man, it's so much closer than any other monitor laptop pairing I have ever put together. As I was using this, one of the things that really became apparent to me is that this isn't just like a monitor that you attach to a computer. It's kind of more of a full blown accessory. It's like an extension of the Mac experience. And you probably already know this, but I feel like it is my sworn duty as a reviewer to say it out loud. Don't buy this if you're on a PC. It should work on any PC that has a Thunderbolt port, although I could not get it working on my desktop. I didn't really fiddle around and try to figure out why, even though that has Thunderbolt 4. But the other reason is you're really throwing out like half of this display's features when you're not using it on a Mac. And that's a big part of what you're paying for here. This has the new A19 processor that you find in the latest iPhone Pros. You also have that powering the FaceTime camera. It's powering some really good speakers, surprisingly good speakers. Music is so good on this. Little tangent, I have some decent like Steel Series speakers that I use with my PC that I plug into stuff that sound really, really good. And I was kind of surprised that these displays sound just as good and sometimes better. I will say this about the balance there. They are pretty bassy. For music, that sounds really, really good. But when I'm watching YouTube videos or things that really aren't balanced for professional audio, I notice that bass like pumping a little bit too much for me. That could have something to do with the fact that YouTubers don't know how to balance audio the way professional music engineers do, but I don't know. Now, I review a lot of monitors, mostly drawing tablet monitors, and there's an alphabet soup of ports along the back. Here, there are 4 USB-C ports. That is it. 2 of those are Thunderbolt 5. The first one is an input from your Mac. The other is there for daisy chaining to a second monitor. And as As a plus, if you're using this with a MacBook, your MacBook will also charge while it's connected to the monitor. Also worth noting, those two other USB-C ports support connections going up to 10 gigabytes. There's some other things I want to touch on, but before I do, I want to shout out to today's sponsor, me. My Learn to Draw in 60 Days course is really designed for beginners. If you've ever wanted to just learn to draw or pick up sketching as a hobby, this is a great place to start. Right now, you can get a discount with the code Monitor Month because it's Monitor Month around here, and that's what we're doing. To learn more about that drawing class, check out the link down below, bradsartschool.com. Let's talk about compatibility. Usually when we're talking about monitors, you think it's a monitor. You plug it in, it works. This only works on modern M series Macs. In fact, my M1 Pro just barely crossed the line of compatibility, and I had to finally update to the latest version of Mac OS for it to work. Even then, it can't do everything. It can only support 60 Hertz mode. If you want 120 Hertz, you have to have an M4 or an M5 or the M2 Max or Pro or higher. So before you really invest in something like this, it is probably important to check out the compatibility. This is also compatible with some of the newer M series iPads too, so that's pretty cool. Quick note, you do need an M5 iPad Pro in order to take advantage of all 120 Hertz this display has. Otherwise, other iPads are going to default down to that 60 Hertz refresh rate. I want to come back around to what I said at the top of the video, which is that this is partly a luxury product because of the price, of course, partly because of the design. And when I say luxury, that is not to say that there aren't some really good use cases for this display. There are some who will find tremendous value here if you're doing broadcast quality video, if you're doing high-end photo retouching, if you're on a team that needs that color consistency across all your devices. A really good pro monitor that does this sort of thing is not cheap. But this video is coming out several weeks after the monitor itself released, so I had the chance to see what other people were saying. I was scrolling a Reddit thread, as you do. People were talking about this thing in the way that folks on the internet do. Some were pumped, some were baffled, a few were unnecessarily angry. It was a good time. There were definitely people on the thread who just wanted a 120 Hertz Apple display. It didn't sound like they had like a really compelling reason to spend this much money on a monitor. So if you have it, cool. But I've always been fascinated by how Apple walks that line between practical and fashionable. You can make the case that this monitor has a place in the market at its price because of the color reference modes. It's a lot harder to make the case for the price of the height adjustable stand though. Right now it's a $400 edition. This height adjustable stand on the last product was a $1,000 edition. Of course, now it's just included with the price. You can get a VESA mount option and knock $400 off the price. It's in the details like this stand where Apple leaves the spec-driven computer world and enters that luxury brand world. Marques Brownlee made a video a few years back where he talked about the $700 wheels that Apple made for the Mac Pro desktop. He made the point that luxury brands will often make something expensive that you don't really need and aren't really mad about not being able to afford in order to raise the perceived value of their products or their entire brand. So when you look at this and compare it to the $1,600 standard studio display, you think, oh, the standard studio display price isn't so bad, even though it is kind of a crazy price for an expensive monitor. I don't think it was an accident that these really high-end, really expensive products were released alongside the value-driven MacBook Neo, a product whose entire existence is to be cheap. They can still hold that luxury brand image so that people who are buying a MacBook Neo, even though they're not paying a luxury price for it, still perceive it as a better brand value. Do you think that strategy is working for Apple? I've got the entry-level Studio Display review coming up next. I got to finish it up in the next few days. Come back here for that one. And also, if you're living in the future, you could just watch it now. You're in the future. It's already on the channel. There might even be other monitor reviews there too. Thank you for watching to the end, and I'll talk to you all in a couple of days.